discussing several capital components. Okay, several components of how the firm can raise capital. And we say the cost for each component is component cost. Okay, and once we take the weighted average of the cost for each capital components, we can calculate WACC, weighted average cost of capital. Okay, we use this WACC in the corporate valuation model to discount all the free cash flows for the firm. Now we're gonna focus on how we can actually calculate WACC by using the different component costs. Okay, we have mainly three component costs: cost of debt, cost of preferred equity, and cost of common equity. Because these are the three major ways for a firm to raise capital: by debt, by preferred equity, or by common equity. And for cost of common equity, there are cases where we cast the cost of common equity for retained earnings. And there are cases when we calculate cost of common equity when we're issuing a new common stock. For new common stock, we would have an additional cost, which is called flotation cost. So the key formulas will be the WACC formula, which is the weighted average of the three component costs. So we use the three weights multiplying by three cost. And the cost of new common equity for a new common stock would be the DCF model we learned, adding a flotation cost F here. Okay, we will go to detail for these formulas and concepts. So let's first look at the definition for capital components and component cost. Capital component, one of the types of capital used by firms to raise funds. Okay, so capital component are the different types of ways a firm can use to raise capital. And it's mainly three ways: debt, preferred stock, and common equity. Okay, so and for preferred stock and common equity, they both belong to the equity category. And for debts, we have short-term notes payable. We also have long-term debts. For common equity, we have retained earnings and new common stock. Okay, so this graph here shows us how the structure of the three component costs for capital and the subgroups. Increases in assets must be financed by increases in these capital components. Okay, so these are the ways of raising capital. You know the accounting equation: assets equals debt plus equity, or debt plus shareholder value. So on the left-hand side equation, any increase in the asset must be financed by something on the right-hand side of the equation. Either it's debt or stock or equity. Okay, and we say the cost for each capital component cost. And if we take the weighted average of all the component costs, we would have WACC, the weighted average cost of capital. It's a weighted average of the component costs of debt, preferred stock, and common equity. Okay, WACC is the cost of the firm incurs by keeping the money and not returning it to investors. Hence, WACC is the opportunity cost of investors. WACC equals to WDRD multiplied by 1 minus T tax rate plus WPRP plus WCRS. Okay, so we have three weights here. The W's refer to firms' capital structure weights. WD equals WD means weight of debt. WP means weight for preferred stock. WC means weight of common equity, 3 weights. We use the 3 weights multiplied by the 3 R. The R's refer to the cost of each component. We have RD, cost of debt, RP, cost of preferred stock, RS, cost of common equity. Note that only debt has a tax adjustment, 1 minus tax rate. Okay, so we use 3 weights multiplied by 3 costs, but for debt, we have tax adjustment. And this RS here is cost of common equity. It's the same as the RS we learned in the CAPM model, the stock return. Okay, RS, RI, they're both cost of common equity, they're also stock return. It's also the same thing as the RS in the constant growth model of the dividend discount model version. Okay, so RS can also be equal to D1 over P0 plus G. Question: should our analysis focus on before tax or after tax capital costs? Answer: stockholders focus on after-tax cash flows. Therefore, we, management, should focus on after-tax capital costs. Hence, we use after-tax cost of capital in WACC. Only RD, cost of debt, needs adjustment because interest is tax deductible. Practice: the cost of capital used in capital budgeting should reflect the average cost of the various sources of investor-supplied funds a firm uses to acquire assets. This is true. Okay, the cost of debt used in capital budgeting is exactly WACC, and it reflects the cost for each component. Another practice: the before-tax cost of debt, which is lower than the after-tax cost of debt, is used as the component cost of debt for purposes of developing the firm's WACC. This is false because we're using actually after-tax cost of debt when we're calculating WACC. We do have the tax adjustment for debt. Question: is actual numbers or target capital weight structure? So for the 3 weights, for now, we are just taking the target weights provided in this chapter as management determined. We will be using the target weights, not the actual numbers. Example: overview of Coleman Technologies Incorporation. So here we're going to be provided some financial ratios for this firm, and we're going to calculate WACC for this firm based on the ratios. And of course, we're going to calculate the 3 component costs first, and then take the weighted average as the WACC. Okay, so first we know the tax rate as 40%, so T is 40%. We know the long-term bond issued by this firm is a 15-year, 12% coupon, semi-annual payments, non-callable bonds, selling for 1153.72. New bonds will be privately placed with no flotation cost, and the par value of this bond is 1,000. Okay, based on these information, we're going to use the knowledge learned in the bond chapter to calculate cost of debt, the bond return, or yield to maturity. Because we already know the bond price, the maturity, and we can also calculate the coupon payments based on this 12% coupon rate. But remember, any rate you're given here, no matter it's coupon rate or yield to maturity, it's gonna be an annual rate. And we know this is a semi-annual coupon payment bond. So we're gonna use this coupon rate multiplied by par divided by 2 to get semi-annual payment. And the preferred stock issued by this firm is a 10%, 100 par value quarterly dividend perpetual preferred stock, selling for 111.1. So we know this preferred stock price. We know that the par value is 100. We know the rate for dividend is 10% and it's quarterly dividend, is a perpetuity, we're going to use all these information to calculate the cost of preferred stock or the return of the preferred stock. For common stock issued by this firm, it sells at $50 and D0, the dividend just paid, is 4.19 and the growth rate is 5%. So we know it's a constant growth model. The dividends are growing at this constant rate 5% forever. We're going to use the constant growth model to calculate the cost of common stock, RS. Other information, we also know the beta for this firm is 1.2, risk-free rate is 7%, market risk premium, RPM, is 6%. So based on these information, we can use CAPM model we learned to calculate RS, stock return, or cost of common stock. We also know that bond yield risk premium is 4%. Okay, this is a new concept here. Bond yield risk premium is the difference between the stock yield and the bond yield of the same firm. So we can use cost of debt plus this premium to get the cost of common equity. Okay, so we have three ways of calculating cost of common equity. We can use constant growth model or CAPM model. We can also use bond return plus the bond yields risk premium to get the stock return. Okay, we're going to use three ways to calculate stock return or cost of common equity. And for the three weights, the target capital structure, it's going to be the target capital structure here. 30%, 10%, 60% for WD, cost of debts, WD, weight for debts, WP, weight of preferred stock, WC, weight of common equity. Okay, because it's given here that for these three components, we have the book value, weights for these three, market value of these three, but we're not using any of these. We're using the third column here, the target weights. Okay, so here is all the information we know. We're going to calculate cost of debt, preferred stock, and common stock one by one, and multiply them by using the three weights. Take the tax adjustment to calculate WACC for this firm, Coleman Technologies. Okay, so before I head to the next section, you could probably pause the video now. Try to use all these information, calculate the cost of debt, preferred stock, and common equity using all these informations here, and try to use the WACC formula to calculate WACC. Okay, I'm going to show you all the solutions or the calculation process in the rest part of the notes, but it's great if you can try doing all of these on your own because we have learned all these methods. Okay, so if you have tried on your own, let's look at the different sections of calculating different component costs for this firm. Let's first start calculating component cost of debt, RD, the marginal cost of